Hi, it's Grant Johnson. I'm here at Inspire 2017 in Nashville, Tennessee, and today my guest is Russ Gould. Welcome, Russ.
Thanks, Grant. Good to be here.
You know, there's a lot of discussion at this week's conference around this thing called robotic process automation, I guess otherwise known as RPA, and people talking about it like it's a revolution. Can you tell me a little bit more? How is this gaining traction with enterprises?
Sure. Some of this technology is not necessarily that new, but it is kind of creating a revolution. And I think the reason for that is organizations are enamored with or look forward to the promise of the savings that they can achieve. And savings mean different things to different organizations. Some may look at it as, I'm going to get rid of some FTEs and I've got tens of thousands of people doing these very manual, rote tasks on a daily basis all day long. But others are looking at it very differently. And in terms of that savings, whether it's our business is growing and I don't want to keep adding people, so finding ways to make the existing staff more productive. Some are even looking at this from a millennials perspective in terms of their workforce. So not just millennials, but also employee satisfaction. So got a story from a customer the other day that they have new trainees come into the company and they'll have about 30 of them and they've got 20 different systems that these people have to learn to do all this manual work. Half of the people, the millennials, half of the class leaves because all the millennials say, I'm not sticking up for this. But back to the main thing, it's this, the savings and the productivity improvement and the return on investment, right? That's always that word that everybody uses. And when it comes to these robots, it's very easy to calculate the return on investment. A robot is replacing that manual effort. So they know how much work, manual work, that particular robot took. And so it can just, every time it runs, they know how to calculate it up, whether it's 10 seconds, 10 minutes, whatever. Talking to a customer yesterday, in the first 4 months, 10 robots, 11,000 hours of work saved. So huge savings in terms of the organization. That's really the big promise and what everybody's excited about.
Well, that sounds fascinating. I think we all understand the concept that robots can do the work, but tell me a little bit more, Russ, about how they do work in different functional areas. What sort of manual things can they replace?
Sure. The key thing here is, it has to do with people and systems and data, but if you think about it from an RPA perspective, the big thing that these software robots are doing, it's very analogous to what happened on the manufacturing floor. And let's pick automotive, right? Where they had people on the floor doing things to build cars, and then the robots came in and replaced them. It's the same thing with office work. There are things that individuals do every day, all day, whether it's their full-time job or part of their job, with their fingers. These things are very manual, right? There might be some business rules around them, but not a lot of thinking goes on with respect to this stuff. This is the work that the robots are automating today. And it really is cross-industry in terms of the different, and we've had that experience with our customers, in terms of the different use cases that people are, it spans across the board in terms of industries and across functions within the organization as well. Whether those are customer-facing groups, back-office groups, really across the board.
Talk to me a little bit more, Russ, about the specific industries and some of these use cases. I think because it's gaining so much momentum, there's probably more happening as we speak, but share a few that you seem popular.
So a couple of them, in terms of financial services, banking and insurance are a couple that were the first to kind of jump on board here. The other one from a cross-industries perspective, if I just pick a functional group, finance and accounting is another one that seemed to hone in on the RPA technology. And in finance and accounting in particular, it's one where those groups, those teams are doing a lot of things with a lot of systems to make things happen. And those systems could be things like Excel. Excel's a fundamental part of corporate America today. And so they have people taking journal entries, let's say, from system A and putting them into an Excel spreadsheet or whatever the case may be. But in order to do that integration that's happening amongst those different systems, it's a human doing the work. And so now they're building out the robots to do that automatically.
I mean, that sounds pretty cool. I know there's a lot of fear about it. Robots are going to take over the world. Artificial intelligence will replace us, and some companies say, well, we're going to lose jobs. But the way I've seen it, I've heard customers talk about it, is that it's going to free up human knowledge workers to do more value-added things like sell a person another product or serve them so they're happy instead of mad on some social media channel. What's your perspective?
As I look at it and talking to the customers, there's a couple aspects here, but for the most part, people aren't going to lose their jobs, and most of the customers are not looking at it to just replace FTEs. There will be some impact from that perspective, but the bigger impact, I think, where a lot of the organizations are going, and it's one of the things we talked about before in terms of those benefits, it's that productivity improvement. I want to be able to grow my business. I want to be able to better engage with my customers. So if I can take away that 30% of the job that's all that manual effort, so that person now can spend 100% of their time dealing with customers in a better way, my business is going to end up better off. And so that's really where the sweet spot is, I think, in terms of the way organizations are looking at things. In terms of artificial intelligence and all that kind of stuff, well, I'm an older guy, and I doubt a robot's going to, be my boss anytime soon. So I don't think too many people have to worry about that yet. But that is the next frontier.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, what the robots do today is automate those manual steps. They're not doing a lot of thinking on their own, right? And that is kind of the next frontier. So there is starting to be a lot of conversation around artificial intelligence, because you could see that happening too.
Well, Russ, speaking of that, where are companies today in their robotic process automation journey? Are they thinking about it, considering it, doing it?
Most are very early in their journey. Probably 10% of companies have made steps and are along in that journey. But most are, as I've talked to a couple people even this morning, in France, for instance, every bank has asked them, and they're asking about robotic process automation. But they really haven't taken the plunge yet, right? So it's a 10% kind of thing in terms of where organizations are in terms of making that first step into the journey. It's expected, though, in the next 3 or 4 years that easily 40% of organizations will have made that step and are at some point along in their RPA journey and out of the starting gates where they are now, kind of still sitting.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So do you see companies they're implementing RPA in one area, sort of like the proof point, and then they say, hey, I get a return here, let me try another area, and they just sort of spreads?
It does, and we've seen that from two different perspectives. With new RPA initiatives that tend to be enterprise-wide, they will pick a particular area, do a proof of concept, and then go from there. And they're doing that proof of concept just to prove it out, and they've got plans to spread this out throughout the organization cross-functionally. So that definitely happens that way. We also have that experience in terms of Kofax Kapow and the longtime customers that we've had. It started with one business group years ago, and then now has mushroomed from there to the point where they've got 780 robots, one customer was telling me yesterday, or other ones that are having thousands of robots running on an enterprise-wide basis, helping all kinds of different groups in the organization.
Well, I love that concept. And robots, they don't need to take breaks, and you don't have to feed them, and they don't complain too often as long as you program them with Kapow properly.
Right.
But talk to me about, from a business perspective, what are the main benefits companies are realized by implementing RPA?
The main benefit is some kind of savings. Whether that savings is removing of FTEs, or whether that savings is improving the accuracy, as you were just bringing up. Accuracy is a big thing. The robots run 24/7, don't make mistakes, right? We humans do. Or enabling their staff to work on the things they were hired for. An expensive treasury analyst, those are expensive positions in a company, and they might spend 20 or 30% of their day on little manual tasks instead of trying to figure out what to do with the cash that the organization has, right? Which is what they really got hired to do. So that's a big part of the benefits that they get. So as well as employee satisfaction is another one of those soft benefits. But definitely there's direct cost savings in terms of automating that manual effort, and it's real easy to do with robots because you can very discreetly take a look at what a robot does and how much time savings for a human, and then just keep calculating it up every time the robot runs. Gets pretty fast, pretty quick.
Yeah, do my work while I'm sleeping. That works.
Absolutely.
Well, businesses they're often concerned that they hear about this new technology. You talked about how many are on this journey, 10% and growing, and do they feel like they have to rip or replace anything to implement RPA? How does that sort of evolve?
So absolutely not rip and replace. That is another attraction here. There's a couple things, not so much from a pure benefit, but in terms of RPA projects, they aren't these 2, 3, 4, 5-year implementations where it takes a long time to justify the project. It can be very surgical. And actually that's one of the advantages and one of the interests in terms of the RPA technology is that it can go in surgically and make some productivity improvements around a system without having to touch and change that system. And that's particularly important with legacy systems. Because these legacy systems, a lot of the people around, that used to maintain it are gone, they don't really want to touch them because they're very brittle. So with RPA, they can come in without having to make changes to that system and then get the productivity improvements that they're looking for in terms of their people.
Oh, that sounds great. At Kofax, one of the things we view is the entire portfolio helping companies along their digital transformation journey. And we talked about this morning at Inspire 2017. And we'd like to think we can help them along the way if they're doing process automation or financial processes or robotic processes. How does the RPA fit into this whole digital transformation strategy?
Good question. And in terms of the RPA technology, it's very complementary. Some people think that, oh, this is process stuff, we're automating processes, which you are doing, and business process management does that too. So these are attacking each other. That's not the case at all, very complementary. So to the things you've mentioned across the portfolio, financial process automation, even content services, RPA can help very surgically as a part of the overall solution as customers are on that digital transformation journey.
Well, that sounds very exciting. It's a future that we all want to be part of. I want to thank Russ Gould for being my guest here today at Inspire 2017. Thanks, Russ.
Thanks, Grant.